Lost but found.
Mm-hmm.
Who's it for?
Well, I think I said it before, but it's my intention is it's for anyone to want to listen, right? It's not meant to be just Catholics or Christians. Um, if in a way I just want people to relate with each other. I
Mm-hmm.
think I've always just been fascinated with how people think and how people are so different from each other,
Mm-hmm.
right? How you and me can have very similar beliefs or thoughts on certain things, but then
Mm-hmm.
completely different opposing beliefs on others, just because, like, yeah, it's nurture versus nature, how we're raised, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
etc. And my goal, I guess, through this was to just have a platform to discover that through people.
Okay, so giving people the opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to share.
Yeah, their experiences, their point of view, and for other people to relate to it, but then to also have it challenged between each other. I think that's how we learn and grow from each other,
Okay.
right? Is by challenging each other and having these conversations. Um, I think one criticism that I've heard is that um, sometimes it might come across as too wishy-washy, though,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well,
And
that's
like
what I was
we're
gonna
not
ask.
standing by anything.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, does it cause confusion? Do you have any fear of causing confusion as to what?
To be honest, I don't. I get it. I acknowledge that it could potentially cause
Mm-hmm.
whatever confusion, but I don't think it's that. Not that it's not important. I guess, is it really worth, like, basically, like, should we really not pursue ideas and conversation at fear of confusing someone else? Because doesn't that just mean we're gonna stay stagnant as well?
Okay, so here's my question.
Yeah.
Say, for example, on one of your pods, you
Mm-hmm.
explore a topic,
Sure.
and I don't know if I should I'm not going to use an example.
Okay.
However,
Sure.
however, what I can say is, okay, so I was listening to, I'll use an example vaguely. I was listening
Okay.
to one of your pods,
Yeah.
and by the end of it,
Mm-hmm.
I was just like,
You don't know what to think.
I don't know what I think. I was like, I'm so confused right now.
Yeah.
And the thing is I know what I believe,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm like, all of these things were just like shaken up. And
Yeah.
I was
Oh.
like, what is happening? And I'm like, I obviously I didn't lose my faith or
Yeah.
anything, but it just kind of like, I was just like, so what
Leaving you
was,
more lost than found.
maybe a little bit, like in my mind, like
Yeah.
a little bit like, wait a minute, there was no conclusion here.
Mm-hmm.
Or there was no, or it was a little more this leaning,
Mm-hmm.
like leaning this way. So is this what they believe? Does that make sense?
I think that's the challenge of coming out with something every single, 2 weeks or something, because
Yeah.
you can't. Sometimes conversations are left unfinished, right?
Right.
You can't get it done and packed up into an hour and a half, 2 hours,
Right.
right? Like you want to continue exploring, but then something comes in the way, time,
Right.
whatever, and you're like, hey, we gotta do it the next one. And I think my intention is that if people are interested and want to keep listening in,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we have that person back, and we have that conversation again, and we continue exploring it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, I stand by this belief that no piece of information should be hidden at fear of, like, being confused or ruining someone's beliefs,
Right.
because that to me seems silly or ridiculous. Because if your beliefs were so fragile
Mm-hmm.
that the only reason you were holding on to it is because they weren't challenged in this way,
Mm-hmm.
it means then you don't really have true beliefs in something,
Mm-hmm.
right? It just means you had a belief um that was yet to be broken anyways. You get what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying. I get that
It's like
completely.
saying, like, I believe horses are purple.
Yeah.
And the only reason I believe that is because I've never seen a horse in real life.
Right.
And you're like, well, I want to show you a picture.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, don't show me the picture.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
It's like you're refusing for your beliefs to be challenged.
exactly.
However, the interesting part is, what if there is someone
Yeah.
who is just starting to get into their faith.
Yeah.
And they were to hear something on the pod
Mm-hmm.
that um maybe presents a different view,
Mm-hmm.
and they're still new to their faith. They don't really know it.
Yeah.
They haven't even got to the I'm ready to be challenged piece. It's
Yeah.
just like they're still learning, they're still figuring it out. And they hear something and they're like, "Oh, maybe I don't know what I believe about that." Who's responsible? Do we hold any kind of moral responsibility to present ourselves in a way that is accurate in terms of Catholic beliefs? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think this though goes beyond the pod as far as well. Okay, sorry. Let me try to break this down because I was trying to say though, like, isn't that your responsibility in general and as a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
To just present yourself and your beliefs in the way you act and however. But
Of course.
I guess when you take on, if you choose to actively like go onto a public platform and be like, hey,
Right.
let's put us out there,
Right.
there is this additional responsibility.
Right.
I was trying to say no, it's the same, but I guess it's not because no
Yeah.
one's asking me or everyone to go on a pod, right? It's
Yeah.
like I'm now doing this, but I'm also not claiming to be some Catholic pod either. I guess you know
Right.
what I mean. Like I'm not gonna hide the fact that I am Catholic. I'm
Right.
gonna talk about it because
Yeah.
it's pertinent to me. It's
Yeah.
pertinent to part of the message that Lost but Found is built on, right? The
Right.
foundations of it. But I have been always more interested in just anyone being on there, right, or talking about it. Now the responsibility piece, to your point, I think it's a tough call because that person could have more drive to then find reasons to then, debunk what we just said that has caused some confusion, right? They could even leave a comment if they really wanted to. And I'm open to even addressing it in another pod, right? Or talking about it. Like to
Mm-hmm.
me, that would be really exciting is if the communication, because the pod, right? The intention would be more so to create this community,
Right.
right? Where people feel that they can share in their concerns
Mm-hmm.
and their, their just imperfections,
Right.
right? And that sharing of imperfections may lead to questions
Mm-hmm.
and wanting answers.
Yeah.
And if they can post about that or comment on that, and then the chat in itself has conversations about it, or then we can come in and have like answers to it. That to me is like ideal. I would really like that.
So it's like opening up
A
a
channel
channel for
for dialogue,
dialogue.
exactly.
Okay. That
Right?
makes sense. Yeah. It creates a
Hmm.
community
Yeah. I think as
online.
a Catholic, my intention still is to make sure that we don't misrepresent anything that is being taught.
Right.
Right? I do stand by that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will not stop from exploring an idea
Of course.
and questioning it, even if it's somewhat
Contrary.
contrary or
Okay.
pushing on it,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
hopefully the intention is we'll find an answer.
Yeah. And I guess the thing is, the interesting part is kind of like what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like on this pod, we're being challenged
Yeah.
as Catholics
Yeah.
to make sure that we have the answers. So we're not blindly believing
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah. Kind of.
In
Yeah.
some way, like
Unintentionally. Yeah.
unintentionally, you're forced to
To have
to be like,
answers. Yeah.
well, I actually don't know the answer. Let's explore this.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting. Kind of like what we were saying, like, what does the catechism even say
Mm-hmm.
about, like, if you do all these things, but you don't actually have a personal relationship
Mm-hmm.
with God, are you actually Catholic? Like, I want to know now. Like, I want to know what's the answer to that. Like,
Right. Yeah. No, that's
tell
fair.
me.
I think a little bit controversial though would be that if someone posed an opinion or an idea
Mm-hmm.
that actually did leave me stumped a little bit, and that was left on the pod just like as, oh, interesting,
Yeah.
and then I might want to change my opinion on that, or kind of take in what they said and kind of apply it to my own way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, am I now responsible to then not do that, or research and then what I mean? Like I think that's where I may not do that,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
right?
If this
Uh,
dialogue is now open and someone
yeah,
were to challenge you,
and it made me rethink something, and I
yeah,
actually kind of see where they're coming from.
yeah,
I don't think my first thing would be to go fact check it and then just come out as, well, no, this is what the church says, so I'm going to believe this. Because I'm not that person, right?
Right.
I am someone who has always created my beliefs off challenging it with my own set of like, not ideologies, but my own set of like logical loops.
Okay.
I don't know how to explain it. Just,
Yeah.
it's got to do it's, I got to fact check it in my own head and be like, how does this make sense?
Yeah.
And
And I mean,
then,
well, that's I think what I think we're supposed to do that. I think we're supposed to like God gave us faith and reason.
Mhm.
Like I don't think we're just supposed to be like,
Yeah,
"Oh yeah, I believe this cuz this is what I'm supposed to believe." I think we're supposed to understand it, I think.
I agree. But then see, this is where it doesn't mean this in itself is an example of how probably it's going to leave a lot of people confused.
Okay.
Because right off of what you said right there,
Yeah.
the hole in that, which has also then pulled me back,
Yeah.
is how does that differ then from all the different Protestant, oh my god, Protestant, I can't even speak.
Protestant.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. I was like,
Those people.
but yeah, just like Anglican, Lutheran, like all of these
Right.
different, what do they when they split? All these splits.
Like the denominations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Words. Honestly,
Yeah.
they came from challenging and using their own logic, and then saying, "Well, this doesn't make sense to me." So there is that piece then to note. Like, are we gonna end up being some? Welcome to 12 Apostles, the Christian denomination.
Our new denomination.
Exactly. Like that's what I'm saying. Where
Right.
that's not what I'm trying to.
Right, that's not what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I think that there's faith and reason, but I think the interesting part about Catholicism is that you can look at history, and the history
Mhm.
is kind of that foundational piece. And like
Yeah.
if you go and explore it, and this is not to discredit any other denominations.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. Like I'm just saying in terms of what we believe as Catholics is just like if you go back and you explore it like historically and you even test that reason out with Catholicism,
Mhm.
you can find answers.
Yeah,
I
I'm
believe.
sure. I'm sure.
Because like it's interesting. I heard this thing that
Mhm.
a lot of the scientists who like discovered all this stuff were actually Catholic. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, science and Christianity do not they do
Mhm.
not mesh." And it's like, no, they actually mesh really well.
Yeah.
Like God created science. Like it kind of works together. So it's kind of like an
You
interesting.
shouldn't be afraid of science.
It's like it's a good thing. Science is
Yeah.
good. So I think it's like I don't know. I think it's an interesting. I think that it's good to explore these ideas because then you do go back and you actually can use
Mhm.
reason to even reinforce something that maybe it's like, oh, well, the Catechism of the Catholic Church does say that.
Yeah.
And then you say, okay, let me understand that better. Or let me see if let me make sense of it in my mind. And then you use other avenues to make sense of that.
Do you think personally yourself you would, if let's say we're on an episode where you're now left kind of questioning something, you would try to fact check it specifically within a Catholic form of thinking?
I don't know. It's funny because I don't know if I've ever explicitly been like, I'm going to the Catechism of the Catholic
Yeah,
Church.
right.
I've never done that.
I want to know what the Pope says.
Yeah, tell me right now.
Yeah.
Immediately. I've never actually done that.
Yeah.
Maybe I've gone to like catholic.com
Mhm.
and looked it up or something, but like not explicitly. I can't think of actually. I think I've kind of initially just been
Mhm.
like, okay, let me make sense of this in my mind.
Yeah.
Maybe I've Googled like what is the like
Beliefs of this.
but yeah, like what is the background behind this? Like why do we do this? Or like
Yeah.
what is the purpose? But have I explicitly gone to the catechism? I don't know if I have. I think I've questioned things and been like, I wonder what the church teaches about
Yeah.
this. Have I actually gone to look it up? I don't know if I have. I don't know. But I'm not opposed to doing that. And I think that's a good thing. But I also
Yeah.
think it's a good thing to understand where that belief sits in society at large. Like how that belief just exists outside of everything.
Exactly.
I think that that's okay. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
Which is what I mean. I want to explore. I think being honest, like I don't build my belief systems based off what I don't try to make sure it aligns with the Catholic beliefs. I don't know if that's wrong or right. I think it tends to align,
Yeah.
which is why I call myself Catholic. I find that at the end of the day, when I start processing information, I see how it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So then I stick with like the faith because it's like, okay, no, it aligns, it works.
Yeah.
But I don't specifically go to Catholic sources. I've never done that.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever done that, but strangely, when I do find the answer, it's like, oh yeah, that is what the church teaches.
Which
Okay.
could be confirmation bias. Okay, hold on, pause. I did want to challenge what we're saying now. Maybe we have confirmation bias, right? Where we already have these set beliefs though
Mm-hmm.
in how we view things. And
Yeah.
so when we look for these answers, it just happens to align because we also want it to align.
That's an interesting take.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't know. I are any of us actually fully open-minded though?
Of
We're
course.
all rooted in
Yeah.
some
Bias,
kind
some
of
bias, yeah.
bias, right? Like no one at the end of the day is going to be like, well, I'm I don't know. Like I have no bias here
Mm-hmm.
and like I'm exploring this completely open-minded. Like I don't know if you
Exactly.
can. Like I don't know if you actually can. But I think that um there are multiple like factors
Mm-hmm.
um like reason based on like you can even do like past experience. You can do there's multiple like influences
Mm-hmm.
um that can confirm a belief. And I don't know if that's just the bias, but I think that there's objective truth. I think that's an interesting topic to explore.
Yeah.
Like I think objective truth is huge because you can objectively believe like you can believe something and it can be true. Like if someone were to say like I don't know,
Yeah.
this pen is like say it's a red pen
Mm-hmm.
and you're writing it on paper. Um and even if someone is colorblind, the pen at the end of the day
Is red.
is red. That can be objectively
But does that apply to faith
confirmed.
though? I don't think it applies to faith.
I think it can apply to certain beliefs within faith.
Like such certain values.
Values for sure, like moral issues.
Well, I think so.
Yeah,
That's
like I think
fair.
certain things like can be confirmed just through the fact that things are objectively true. So like things that you can see in nature, things that you can see in
Well, sorry to challenge that, but like speaking to, other people who
mhm.
aren't in the faith,
Yeah.
they have different perspectives because they're not building it off of.
Right. And that that's
Yeah.
fair. Like I'm not discrediting them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm not telling them
Yeah.
what they believe is wrong.
Yeah.
However, I am saying what I believe
You currently,
I
yeah.
believe that this is true.
Got you.
And I
Fair.
believe it's objectively true.
Yeah, okay, I hear you.
So, even if they
Yeah.
don't believe it, like I believe it's objectively true in the sense that like
It's not
because
necessarily what you want to believe, but you believe it because
well,
it makes sense.
no, it's not that well, I believe that it's that way
Mhm.
regardless of whether or not someone tells me that it's that way. Does that make sense? So like so here's an example.
Okay,
So
yeah,
like
I need
so
an
like okay.
example. I'm so
So like
lost.
so like if there's a pen
Okay, yeah, and
and
it's
the pen
red.
is red
Yes.
and someone is colorblind
Yes.
and they're like the pen is gray
Yeah.
and the pen was literally created
Mhm.
red.
Yeah, the intention
The
behind
intention
it,
it was
yeah.
red. It was a
Yeah.
red pen. But to this person, the pen is
It's
gray.
gray.
And objectively, the pen is red.
Yes.
Now, I can say that I can either say this person's right
Mhm.
because to them, the pen is
It's gray.
gray.
Yeah.
But the objective truth
Yeah.
is that the pen is red.
Yes, but how does that exist
Regardless
in
of
faith?
how does I think it can exist in terms of morality. So
Objective morality.
Well, I
Mm-hmm.
think it can be objective truth within morality. So, like, I think that certain things, like, okay, like murder.
Yeah.
Murder is objectively, I mean, some could argue differently.
Yeah. In
However,
self-defense, it's
yeah,
not.
yeah. But at the end of the day, taking someone's life
Is objectively
is
wrong.
objectively wrong
Mm-hmm.
because we're not entitled to it. At the end of the day, we didn't have the right to take it.
Mm-hmm.
Objectively, that can be a truth. But you talk to a serial killer, and I feel like
Yeah.
to them, they're having fun.
Yeah.
They're having a great time.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
I think that, like,
Yeah, I got what you're saying.
you know
I
what I
get
mean?
it. Yeah.
To,
So
like,
then does it mean it's no longer objective? Yeah, yeah.
right?
No, I get what you're saying.
Right? Objectively, it's wrong. But
Yeah.
to a serial killer, it's great.
I hear you.
So I feel like those are things that I think in morality, objective truth exists. So that's why, like, people who have different belief systems,
Mm-hmm.
they could be influenced by different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that they're wrong because that's not my place to judge them
Yeah.
for being wrong. But I can say that this is objectively true. What is so funny?
No, the way you said it was funny.
Like, I'm not judging them.
No, not
but,
that
like,
part. It was I'm not saying they're wrong, but objectively.
but objectively, they are wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
They are.
No, I think it's tricky. I think what you're saying makes sense. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. I understand that. And it's again, so it's funny that in today's culture, it's harder to stand
It is.
on that hill and
Mhm.
and be like, this is the truth, right?
Yeah.
And so I can see in yourself and in myself as you're
Mhm.
saying this stuff. Like I'm like, okay, objective morality, but then as a Catholic, that's what you believe in,
Yeah.
right? And it's nicer to also like I think ideally it's nicer to have an objective morality than to not,
For sure. For
right?
sure.
Because then you at least know again personal preference,
Yeah.
right? That's like now today's thing is like, well, it's up to how you feel about it,
Yeah.
which is what's
but so here's
constantly
the-
hard to like navigate.
So
but
here's the interesting thing.
yeah.
I don't invalidate the colorblind person for seeing it as
Yeah.
gray.
yeah.
They don't have a point of reference to see it as red.
But see, okay, so what's funny about that example and what's tricky is like in your example, there's a clear, definite lack of information in the colorblind person because they are lacking a skill
Yeah.
in seeing the color.
Right.
That is what you're defining, right?
Right.
As a Catholic, right, who is now standing by objective morality,
Mm-hmm.
the claim is now essentially, right, that the truth lies in the Catholic Church. Or in, again, maybe some other religion I believe in. Because objective, also just to kind of pull back for a sec, it's not like the Catholic Church is the only one claiming objective morality.
Mm-hmm.
There's philosophies that claim it. There are people in different religions. Like, so we can all be on the same side here and just be like, yeah, we all believe in objective morality.
Yeah.
And it's because we see this from this perspective and
Right.
people on the other side of the fence don't share that vision because they are blind to it to some extent, something
Right.
like that, right?
Okay, but here's the interesting part with that.
Yeah.
What would be the point
Yeah.
in believing in Catholicism
Yeah.
if it was not? If we didn't believe it was true,
Yeah.
what's the point?
No, I get that. That's why I
Right?
agree.
Like, there's no point. And I get what you're saying. Like, you're saying everyone is claiming that their religion is true.
Yeah.
But not everyone can be right.
No, exactly.
So I think the interesting part is this is where everything comes up to be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it necessarily. And the interesting thing with challenging all these things is you can't just challenge it by saying, well, it says this. It's like, no, you have to challenge it within the framework of like, okay, let's use some reason here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the catechism does explain the why. I think. Doesn't it?
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know.
The hardest part is the catechism is built off of basically deciphering the Bible, right?
Is that what it is?
Everything that comes from the catechism
Is it the Bible?
Yeah.
Or I don't know.
It comes from biblical text.
Oh,
like you wouldn't go in the catechism and then it wouldn't reference some scholarly article from someone else, or from some Catholic.
Right.
It would literally come from biblical references.
Okay.
And then the
A tradition, I guess.
The tradition and more so like these thinkers
Yeah.
would have come together and then been like, no, this is what
Come to like a conclusion
exactly.
about something. Okay. Wow. I really need to open up the
Really?
catechism and take a look.
Well,
Take
it's
a
kind of
little
interesting then
gander.
that it speaks to again more so like you're not building your beliefs just solely off again Catholic beliefs, like Catholic teachings,
I
right?
mean,
Like that's really what it is.
I would say like it's interesting because like or is that just confirmation bias? Because like
Hmm.
somehow my beliefs do align with that. But I haven't opened the catechism and been like, let
Can I
me
ask you
look.
a question? So there's nothing personally. You don't have to say what it is, but there's
Okay.
nothing personally that you just don't align with the Catholic Church on, and you're like, this I have a hard time understanding.
There have definitely been things that I've had like a hard time understanding.
Okay,
Um
but you
I will
made amends.
you know what I will say?
Okay,
I actually have a hard time understanding purgatory.
okay,
I don't understand where that comes from. And
interesting.
maybe I just need to explore it more or look
Okay,
into it more,
yeah.
but I've never really understood it. I
Oh,
can say that.
interesting.
Yeah.
I don't
I,
have issue with that one actually.
yeah, I don't know if I have an issue. I just don't
Yeah, you
know.
don't
I don't
understand
know
it.
enough. I don't understand it. Like I don't understand where it came from. At
Yeah,
least like looking at it like biblically
yeah.
trying to
Where did that come from?
like where did but there's apparently I don't know. Apparently there is something biblical, but it's from like the Old Testament. I
I'm
don't
not
know.
sure.
I honestly don't know. And then um praying for people to get out of purgatory
Yeah,
and because so the tricky part that I don't really get
yeah.
like I don't know. I hope I'm not like causing people to like
Question
question.
why?
That's what I'm supposed to do.
Why does that worry you?
Because um I don't want people to listen to something I have to say. I don't want to be a bad representation of what it means to be a Catholic.
You know what's funny? I'm more worried about coming out and saying stuff too strongly without explaining it completely or explaining the thought process or the concern behind it. Because I have always been against someone who just comes out stating things.
Right.
It always rubbed me the wrong
Yeah,
way.
yeah. I don't think I'll ever do that. I
Okay.
don't think I mean, I don't know, maybe I have.
Yeah.
But I'm not coming out and saying like I'm not like
Kind of, but with your whole goal of making sure that someone hopefully doesn't question things because you're kind of giving them answers or making
yeah.
statements that they can at least stand behind.
Yeah.
You are still making these statements, like you're making claims that are like, well, this is this. So then that way this person doesn't question. But I'm like, you're
Not
also then,
necessarily
okay.
cuz I feel like so I just told you about purgatory.
Yeah, exactly.
So like with that, I genuinely
Hmm.
don't understand it. Um does that mean that I do
Yeah.
like
Sorry, I
does
had a joke in my mouth.
what's the joke?
It's so that you have a 66% chance of making it to heaven and a 33% chance of going to hell. It's just another way God like helped funnel you into it's like a math thing, right? It's like instead of a
I really
50-50,
don't
it's
get
like so it's like heaven or hell, right?
Oh,
It's a
oh, it's
joke.
like
It's
a, oh,
that's what
I
I mean.
get it. I
Like this
get
isn't
it.
actually
I
serious, right?
understand. I get
Yeah.
it. I get
But
it.
instead of a 50-50, it's
Whoa,
now
use the
66
devil's
and
numbers. Right? Isn't it 66.6?
66.67 or
Okay.
something. And there's a
Yeah.
7 in there at some point, right?
Okay, okay.
Or it's I guess perpetually just sixes. I don't
I don't
know.
know.
And
I
then
don't know math.
3.333
Oh, the
whatever
Lord's
for the hell.
numbers.
Yeah. But obviously that's not how it works. But
No, no, no. I understand. Yeah, so there's a higher chance that you can
yeah,
go to
exactly. You
heaven.
have two
Yeah, you have
chances.
to. Yeah, God's given you more.
Exactly. You're not an
So
A
like,
student, but you're like
yeah,
a C minus.
yeah, it's okay. You're solid 73.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. So, and like praying people out of purgatory.
Yeah.
That's another part that I don't understand really. So these are things that like I because I don't understand them though,
Yeah.
like I won't ever speak to it because I don't know
Hmm.
unless I like go and be like, okay, I'm gonna make it a point to understand this now. That's kind of where That's where I'm at with that.
Okay.
Like, is there something you specifically feel like you don't align with? See, I wouldn't even say it's that I don't align with it. I just don't know. I just don't quite understand it.
Things I don't align with. Okay, so like I don't think it's also things that I don't align with necessarily. Um I think there are going to be a lot of things that I have like you're saying questions about,
Mm-hmm.
or actually not really questions. It's more like they're caveats,
Okay.
right? So I may believe in this particular thing in the Catholic Church, but
Mm-hmm.
not without its caveats, not without prefacing like this, and this, right?
Okay.
Um,
Like, can you give an example? Like,
um, I think I can, but they tend to always be in the more hot topic political stuff, which
okay.
again, then I'd want to have to explain the prefaces and the caveats, right?
Yeah.
And like that's a whole other conversation, and
Okay.
that's why it's hard. Like those things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you have to be careful.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
You
You have to be,
wanna
you have to like kind of
the
tiptoe around
navigation
it.
of
And it's
that is
not,
like
yeah.
not worth the trouble, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
I'd have the conversation in person
Yeah.
because then I have no issues like explaining myself
Yeah. Yeah.
and having the conversation. I think I'm pretty sure I can find it and definitely a middle ground with most people.
Right.
Um, but no, an example though of like where, for example, like this whole believing in God thing, right? Believing in
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. Like, part of me wants to say, yeah, I believe 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still days where I'm like, I start to go back and forth. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, sometimes I think it's a detriment,
Yeah.
but I
A detriment to believe.
detriment to myself
In
and
what
my journey
in
in a
what
way.
way?
So, for example, like, okay, I want to stand here and I say, yeah, I believe in Jesus and God and everything the faith is telling me, right? I have this personal relationship with God that I talk to him, all this stuff. But then there are going to be days where I second guess the whole, I want to say the whole system, but just, yeah, the whole system. Like, I want to believe in this Jesus, right? And this
Yeah.
whole idea, like, if I believe in you and I do a good person, we go to heaven, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there'll be a day where I'm like, yeah, but then I meet these people who are great people, but they're not born into the faith. How does that work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you can come up with an answer. It's like, oh, God will deal with them in their own way. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure there is some answer like that, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like this open answer that just kind of appeases you,
Mm-hmm.
but doesn't it's not really for sure the answer. It's just an answer that kind of appeases you, saying this makes the most sense. You get what I'm saying?
Kind of, but I feel like I don't know. In my mind, that whole thought is kind of reconciled
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like there's so many people in the world who don't know God or haven't had the opportunity to know God.
Yeah.
And I do think that God is God gives everyone an I think God does give everyone an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I also do think that um there can be people who don't know God who are much better people in some way. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
they're good, just good
Yeah.
people.
Via actions, yeah, they're good.
Yeah, they're just like genuinely good people. I think God knows everyone's heart at the end of the day. Like I don't think that believing that these people are just going to go to hell because they don't know
Of course.
Jesus is like
But you see what I mean, though, that how that in itself, though, is an appeasement for your heart. And of course, God speaks truth through you, right?
mhm
And again, like, gives you common sense and logic. And if you wouldn't do that, where you would send people to hell just because they don't believe
mhm
necessarily, or they were born into this wrong faith, why would God do that, right? If that seems so logical and we all kind of agree on it. Like, I think collectively, I think everyone could be like, yeah, that essentially makes sense. I could say, yeah, I stand behind you. So let's just make sure that that's the claim. We believe that. But you still don't fully know, right? There's no actual thing you can pull out and be like, look, God texted me. See, like,
I
this
think
is legitimately what's going to happen.
I think the interesting part is that like God is beyond
Mm-hmm.
anything that we can even like God is bigger than this problem, in the sense that, like, I think it is in our, like, it is our responsibility as Christians to, like, live out our faith so that
Yeah.
people do want to seek God. I think that
Important.
that's really
Yeah.
important. But I also think that at the end of the day, we can't say, "Oh, those people aren't going to heaven. It's too bad." It's like,
Oh, of course. That's the thing. I'm not making that claim
right,
either.
right. But like,
I'm not
but
standing there saying,
yeah,
yeah, they're definitely not getting.
yeah. But the thing
Yeah.
is, like, we, I think everyone will be judged on what they know at the end of the day.
Again, like I'm not disputing you. I'm not finding this thing. I'm not finding issue
I
with what
know.
you're
That's what
saying.
I get what you're saying. You're saying that it's like
There's
a,
just no guarantee, right? There's still gonna be that question mark,
but
and
there's no guarantee for any of us
no, of
in some
course.
way,
But
right?
as a Catholic, you kind of have a cheat code, right? Where you know the rules, or you and you're it's if it's easier for you to abide by those rules, you have an easier time.
I don't know. It might be even harder
Well,
because you're Catholic and you know,
yeah,
it's more condemning.
yes, I agree with that.
It's actually worse.
Yeah.
The more you know, the harsher you'll be judged. So like, people who don't know will actually be judged less harshly,
Mm-hmm.
because, like, if you think of like mortal sin, for example,
Yeah.
it's full knowledge. It's committing a sin with full knowledge.
So okay, let's
Whereas people
yeah,
who didn't know and they commit that same
yeah.
sin, it's not considered mortal sin.
Yes. Okay. So
So,
you're making an interesting point, but this is where I'll kind of okay. Let's try to make sure we define and now construct this like let's build the castle together. Basically,
okay.
let's
Okay.
actually make sense of all of
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Like right now, there are all these bricks basically
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
So because this is what I mean. This is how convoluted things get, and this is what I mean about the challenges in my head.
Okay.
So I acknowledge what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
It makes 100% sense with the idea that the more you know,
Mhm.
the more condemning it will be, the harder it'll be,
Yeah.
right? Because like you said, if you know not to do something
Yeah.
and then you still do it,
Yeah.
it's way worse than if you didn't know you weren't supposed to do it and then you made that mistake, right?
Right.
It's a mistake
It's a
versus
mistake
like a
versus a,
defiant act or
yeah,
whatever, right?
exactly, exactly.
So that's great. That's great. No, like
Fantastic.
we'll put that here. Like
Yeah.
awesome.
Perfect.
Now there's this other notion though where people go like, "Oh, if I don't believe in Jesus
Mhm.
and then I'm about to die, whatever, right? God will help me and
Mhm.
go to heaven." And then there are Christians and Catholics, I'm sure, Catholics as well, that will say, "Well, no, not necessarily. You will not just go to heaven, even if you didn't believe." And the
Yeah.
reason is, and then they'll pull out this example. It's like as if God um, was a doctor, or not. Actually, more the one that sticks out to me is like God is like a friend, right?
Okay.
And it's the end of school,
Mhm.
and he's about to go on his like yacht or something.
Okay.
And the whole school year you were like, who's God? God,
Mhm.
whatever. God who? And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, God, so yacht? And
Yeah.
he's just like, who are you?
Yeah.
Closes the door, right? And then just like pieces out.
Mhm.
Because it's like, if you deny God, right? If
Yeah.
you were, and I guess that kind of plays, I guess, into what you're saying, if you knew.
Mhm.
But then how does it play for the person who doesn't know? You're saying because they didn't know God would be like, well, come get to know me, get on the yacht, try it out. Like, how does that work, I guess?
Well, it's interesting. I saw some movie.
Yeah.
It's like a documentary, and it's called like a life after death or something. I don't know what it's called.
Okay.
I don't know the name. Whatever it is. It's
Yeah.
something about basically people who have had near death
Mm-hmm.
experiences, and they actually, I don't know how far this is true or what it is, but right before they die, they get to see like where they're going. Like they got this, like,
Yeah, I've seen
I
those.
don't
And
know.
some
It
people
was
say it's psychological, like
like,
your
it's
brain
just because
act
it's
has
what your
so many.
brain
It's
is doing at the
switching. Yeah.
last. But there have been two very distinct things that people have seen. One is like good and one is horrible. And it's very interesting because they're described similarly.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people were able to describe, like, if they were on the, like, they see themselves from like above and they can hear things that the doctors were saying, which they never could have possibly heard.
Mm.
Um
Mm-hmm.
because they were completely,
Yeah.
like, dead.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting because I do think that at those last moments or whatever it may be, I don't know how God does it, but like, And I don't know if we ever will maybe like one day in heaven or
Mhm.
something we'll understand. But like I think that everyone does get an opportunity, whether that means like a second before they die or whatever it is. Um, I do think everyone gets an opportunity.
Mhm.
But your question is about someone who chooses God at the last second.
Not necessarily. It's more so that the claim that Catholics make, or Christians actually, just overall Christians make, is that you need to know Jesus. Like Jesus is the key.
Mm-hmm.
So if you deny or don't know Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
then how do you expect to get onto that yacht? How do you expect to be with somebody that you never believed
Is
in
that
his
where
place?
purgatory comes in?
Well, so to kind of jump into purgatory for a second,
Yeah.
my understanding of purgatory has always been that everyone before they can enter heaven, right, which is like this pure bliss,
Mm-hmm.
pure good,
Yeah.
you carry a lot of like dirt on you,
Yeah.
essentially, right, from your life on earth. So
Yeah.
there's supposed to be just, it's again my understanding
Mm-hmm.
was that it was just purifying fires. Like it's
Okay.
just meant to help cleanse you,
Yeah.
and it's painful, and but it's meant to really rid you of all that gunk so that when you go in front of God and you're in heaven,
Whoa.
you don't feel shame.
I just had this revelation.
Okay.
I don't know. Let me see if I can. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
So this is very interesting
Okay.
because so the way you describe purgatory,
Hmm.
I don't know how true any of this is, but you said it's
The
supposed to be.
purifying fires part? I
Mm-hmm.
know that's very true.
Yeah, no, like I mean, I'm not
Uh,
saying I'm not sure how true. Like, what does that? Did I just say I'm not sure if it's true? I mean, no, I don't know how true if what I'm saying is
oh, got
what
you.
I'm about to
Got
say.
you. Got
I'm
you.
not saying what you're saying is not
Yeah.
true. I'm saying what I'm saying.
Got
I don't
you.
know how true this is,
Okay.
but it's interesting because you said it's painful because it actually purifies you.
Yeah.
It probably refines you and
Yeah.
gets your character to where it needs to be. Now, the interesting
Mm-hmm.
part is on Earth, coming back to that discipline piece.
Mm-hmm.
If you start denying yourself on Earth,
Mm-hmm.
you'd probably wouldn't have to go through as much purgatory because you'll be already doing that refinement here on
Yeah.
Earth.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was just like, I don't know. I
No,
just
yeah,
thought of like,
that's,
I was like,
yeah.
whoa,
No,
that's
that's in
like,
line. Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
crazy. That's
That's kind of it. Yeah.
interesting.
The idea is
Okay.
that you wouldn't have as much to clean it
Yeah,
off or
because you're
whatever.
already,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. No,
Interesting.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. That was just a thought. It was a segue, but
No, it
I
makes
thought it was
sense, and it
interesting.
lines up.
Um,
But we're going back to the applying what you're saying, right? So I think I kind of answered it in my head. I want to see if it makes sense though.
yeah,
So the point was that in one box, the judgment is different depending on how well you know God,
right.
right? In the other box, though, people are saying you have to know God though in order to enter.
Mm-hmm.
I can see a bridge where I say, but then if someone doesn't know God, the severity in which God will judge you to let you come onto the yacht may be less severe, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh well, we never had an opportunity of meeting,
Yeah,
so here's my hand.
yeah,
Let's shake and let me get to know you.
yeah. And
But
at that point, they could refuse,
they could,
right? That's the.
they could refuse, but it would be kind of crazy.
It would be, I
To be
guess.
like, oh my gosh, you want me to come on the yacht? Nah, I'm good. Like, yeah, maybe you're not okay. Well, yacht again is a figment, but it's the idea of like pure bliss, this opening, this door to everyone aims to go to heaven anyway. So it's like you're being allowed to go here. Would you really say
Well, I
no?
think the interesting part with heaven is that God doesn't send anyone to hell.
Mm-hmm.
It's people choose it by choosing,
It's
like,
funny. I tried to say this on a pod
yeah,
like months back,
yeah.
and I like
You butchered
I
it.
butchered. I was trying, but I was like, how do I say this? So yeah, please go ahead and try.
Yeah, yeah. So it's basically like God doesn't send people to hell.
Mm-hmm.
People actually choose they prefer the sinful lifestyle. They prefer sin. So they actually choose that.
No, I have to poke at that. That's not no.
And it was so okay. Heaven is basically you want to spend eternity with God.
Mm-hmm.
And now sin is a separation
Mm-hmm.
between you and
Yeah, of
God,
course.
right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you are choosing either sin, which you will forever
Mm-hmm.
have in heaven, like I mean
Yeah.
not heaven, in hell.
Yeah.
Like you're choosing that. You're choosing to be separated from God because
Mm-hmm.
sin is pulling you away from
Sure.
God, right? That's the thought behind it.
I
If you
agree.
don't want
Okay.
to
Yes.
if you choose that you don't want to be with God, why would God put you in heaven? Why would you're not choosing heaven. You're choosing to be separate from God. Why
But
would God subject you to spend eternity with him?
the issue with that, right, is it's kind of an indirect relationship that you've created, right? Where so forget one is that
Mhm.
does everyone know this exact rule, right? Does everyone actually understand what they're giving up, quote unquote, when they're choosing this other decision in their life where they want to do this? Like, so
Well, that comes back to you'll be judged for what you know.
yeah, so that's so but then see that's okay. I know it's like that we can't. There's no way to actually define it, but um I think when it comes down to the choice of like would you want to be with God, can it really be dictated just by how selfish a person's actions are?
I think it can be dictated by
So
s-
because sorry, just to clarify what I mean, um, selfish because technically when you're saying they're choosing the sin, it's like they're choosing they're choosing what feels good in the moment, right?
right.
So essentially the selfish decision, which is to just distract themselves from whatever
Well,
with
it's pride, right?
huh?
It's pride at the end of the day. It's you don't you just want to do whatever you want to do.
No, actually no, I don't agree.
You don't think
I
pride
don't
is
agree.
what
No.
would send you to hell?
Mm,
Because you're literally
I think
like,
in
you know
some
what?
sort well,
You're
pride
like, I
is
don't really want to spend time with God. I would rather just do whatever I want to do.
I
Right?
think pride is in itself a
Mhm.
factor
Okay.
and it plays into the whole even on the other end when you're very prideful about your faith and you're just like all high and mighty,
Yeah.
right? Like I think pride is yes a factor in it, but I have a hard time saying that I can't put that as a blanket statement because right off the bat think of some people in my life and you know them as well who have had unfortunate life events
Mhm.
that set them on a trajectory
Yeah.
where life is just a little bit harder and a little bit more painful,
Mhm.
right? And so when they make these again quote unquote decisions that are not good, right?
Yeah.
Sinful, it's to escape. And
Right.
I can say it's an escape, so they're doing the selfish decision of
Mhm.
saying like, well, I'm just going to do what feels good in the moment.
Mhm.
But I have a lot more empathy to that.
Right. And I don't think
And
we're
I don't
not
think it's coming
I
from
don't
pride. You know what I mean? Like I don't think it's a pride.
well, I don't think we're not supposed to be empathetic. I don't think it's
Yeah.
that. I think it's
But is it pride then? Sorry to go
is
back to what you're saying.
so is what that person is. I mean, at the end of the day, do they have a choice? Or is it as a result of their past that
Mhm.
is don't really have a choice? This is just how they now respond to things as a result. They don't realize that they're responding this way. Or are they self-aware? Do they know that they're choosing something wrong?
I think that's really I would like to think that they do know.
Okay.
I would like to think that it's a lot harder though,
Mhm.
because just because you know doesn't mean it makes the decision that much easier, right?
Right.
The same way, um, like if I really want to, I need to stop eating junk food,
Mhm.
but it's really good.
Right.
Like I'm
Like
gonna,
I mean, I could say that about like cookies.
yeah. But is it my pride? That's my guy. I guess I'm asking that
Like
question
is
though.
I would say it's my pride, like in the sense of like, well, I don't know. It's kind of like I'm addicted to cookies, like to
Okay.
sugar.
Yeah, you love sugar. It's
But to say that that's it, like I just can't stop eating sugar.
yeah,
I can't say that that's
but not everyone's cognizant of that, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to say. It's like when I was giving the example, I'm saying
yeah.
not everyone is cognizant of how their decision impacts their life and what it means in the battle of like, am I going to heaven or hell? Right? It's people are kind of just living. So, and
But, but at what point do we become responsible for the way that we're living? Like is everyone just allowed to be like, I just exist. I just want to like, live my life and that's it? Or are we not morally responsible? Are we just do we have to have some kind of accountability for how we choose to live? Or do we not? Do we not need to? And do some people just not have it and that's it?
I think this is what I would like to explore with more people in
Okay.
life. I think that's why I want to talk to more people.
Okay.
And I want to ask these questions. I think this is another example of
Yeah.
things that kind of stop me a little bit sometimes,
Yeah, yeah.
because it's like it's almost like a cliff again, where when you make, like, if I said that as my belief, like, no, it's your responsibility, and you're like, yeah, you cannot keep making this your excuse.
Okay, so I have a
You're
question
trying,
for
yeah.
you. So let's take out like the
Mhm.
idea of, I mean, we can still actually keep the idea of pride. Let's take the example of someone who is like a murderer.
Okay.
Um, like a very extreme example. So they decide they
I
kill
actually want to
someone.
make it more realistic,
Okay, you want?
because one murder, if my understanding is correct, most murders tend to be just one-time offenders because of, like, it was like a personal vendetta, and then they ended up doing that.
Yeah.
And then a lot of, like, it's very rare where you find like serial murderers, like,
Right,
who,
right.
like,
Let's say this is like a personal, like someone's
yeah.
angry at someone and they kill them. They like plan out this thing and they kill them.
Okay.
Um, now
But then they're never gonna go back to it, because once they do it, they just regret it, or they don't. But then they don't kill again, anyways.
I think though it's the idea that they are. So do they have any? So that person,
Mm-hmm. Are they
they,
responsible?
yeah, are they responsible for what they did, or are they allowed? Do we have empathy for them because that person wronged them? Like, where does that line
So,
happen? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
mm-hmm.
to me, I'd say it's pride in the sense that I can do whatever I want. I can take this person's life if I want. That's like, I feel like someone can cut this piece and like use it as a soundbite of me saying that. I can take someone's life if
We
I
have the
want.
full
We have
video.
the
We have the full video.
we have
Relax.
the proof, okay?
Yeah, exactly. No, okay. So the reason I don't like what's happening here and what you're saying is because I don't think a lot of people disagree with you when it comes to killing somebody,
Okay.
right? And it's a one-time thing.
Yeah. Okay,
Answer
so
these questions.
now use your example with
Okay,
this.
sorry.
So
Yeah.
yeah, like what? So what's your example in regards
My brain.
to
Sorry.
yeah.
So the example is that, okay, so you make that mistake, right, of having sex before marriage, right? And,
Okay.
like, having one night stands, or however it may
Right, right,
be,
right.
with your boyfriend and girlfriend. Who cares?
Right.
The point is,
Who cares?
who cares the circumstances? It's
Yeah.
like you're just in this cycle,
Okay.
right? And the church is now saying, or the faith is saying, hey, before marriage, that's just not a good thing.
Right.
Now, that's someone in the faith. Now, if
Right.
you're not in the faith,
Right.
it's not, first of all, to you,
Yeah.
wrong. Like, it's like, what's wrong with that? Like, what's
Right.
the issue? Like,
Right.
and so it's like, okay, yeah, of course, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Why would you see any issue with it
Right.
just because you're not married?
Right. So here's the interesting part.
Mhm.
So like we talked about like faith and reason.
Yes.
And I think that if you actually like take that whole belief system and like
Reason it out.
reason it out, at the end of the day, are people fulfilled by sleeping around?
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
psychologically, is this something that is good for them?
hmm
I don't know. I don't think
Well, if I'm understanding correctly, yeah, it's not.
I feel like people don't
Yeah.
feel like they're fulfilled
hmm
and they have like a disordered view
hmm
of just people as human beings. I feel like it changes the way people think of people.
Okay.
I think it dehumanizes people.
But sorry, we were going with something different, right? First, before we.
We were talking about pride, but we were talking about something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that I don't think the Catholic Church just teaches that. Just like isn't that your point is that the Catholic Church just teaches it, whereas people who don't believe that would say there's nothing wrong with it. I think people can still argue that it's not exactly the most
It's not the best way to go
it's not
about
the best,
things.
right? I feel like it doesn't you don't have to fall back on the
Yes,
Catholic.
yes,
Like,
I hear
this
what
is
you're
what the do you
saying.
know what I mean?
It's not again like you're saying there's a scientific proof that people
Are not
you're
fulfilled.
not meant to connect with people like that
Right?
in
So
that way.
so the interesting thing with that is you're saying, do people know that, like, do they are they aware, like, is it pride for those people? Is
Yeah,
that what you're asking? Is that the question? Is that what it
we've lost it. No,
we're lost.
it's not
But
that we're
found.
lost. It's not. It's just it's really hard to keep everything organized and
Right.
stay on because there's so many caveats and or different things to address or certain
Right.
points to make, and that's what's I guess hard about this.
Right.
If we kind of pick up where we left off, though, what you're saying, I think okay, yeah. One, I want to understand the pride part still. So yeah,
Yeah, so
it's
I would
pride
say it would be
because they
pride
what?
in the sense of, like, you're still like, even if it might not be, like, mentally and emotionally good for
Yeah.
you, you're still doing whatever you want to fulfill a whatever immediate desire,
Okay, but the thing
right?
is, one culture or just there isn't as much emphasis on how unhealthy it is for you.
No, there's nothing about that
No, there's a
really.
little bit. Like
There
I've seen
is.
it,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
not again, it's not this cultural norm to be like this is why it's wrong
Right.
for you and you
It's
shouldn't do
right.
this.
It's actually more of
Yeah.
the opposite to say that it's weird if you don't.
And even then your definition is specifically for people sleeping around.
Right.
But what if it's just like a long-term relationship?
Right. And they're just not married.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is I mean, then it goes down to, like, marriage is like this
Which is a
covenant
Catholic
between, like,
Catholic thing.
you and God and your
Exactly. So that's the thing.
spouse, and, like,
That's
there's
Catholic
that's
now.
Catholic, right? So at
So
the end of the day, God, I would say, would judge that person
mhm.
according to what they know, right?
Okay, hold on. So you don't okay, I just want to flesh this out. So if there are couples or
Yeah.
who are just not Catholic and they don't really
Right.
know Catholic teachings
Right.
and they are in their relationship, having sex, which Catholics see as, oh, that's wrong because you're not married. But they don't know
Right.
that.
Right.
The idea is that it's no longer pride because they don't know.
I think I don't know. It depends what they do know, right? Like, are
Hmm.
they genuinely living in a way
Yeah.
where they like love that individual? Like, are they sacrificing? Like, do you know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, is there
And then, sorry, and then is God now going to like basically to some extent take some of that into account that they didn't know?
I mean, I think God would, yeah, like, I don't
Yeah.
think you can commit sin if you don't know,
Hmm.
right? And like, I think the thing with pride, it could be pride unintentionally. Like, they
Hmm.
might be acting, maybe they are acting selfishly, maybe, but I don't know what the reason is, because they don't have that covenant with the like marriage or whatever it is. So I don't know. I think that's God would take all of that into account. I don't think it can't be mortal sin
Hmm.
if you don't know, apparently, right? Isn't that what it is?
Actually, I'm not sure.
I don't
Is
think
it that is that the claim that
I
it
think
can't be
so. I
mortal
don't
sin if you
think
don't know?
yeah. I think mortal sin is full knowledge. If you don't have full knowledge, it's not mortal sin.
Okay, it's funny. What you said makes like I've heard that before. I swear I have.
Mhm.
But that's actually really interesting. Then
Mhm.
is that
Well, look it up.
no, 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 I'm just it makes sense.
I
Like
am pretty sure that's right. I'm
because
pretty sure.
it also aligns with the whole point you're making, which is like those who know are more held at a
Mhm.
higher standard.
Yeah.
So would it be better then to not know your faith until the end?
And then you just get to do whatever you want.
Kinda. I didn't know, and then God's just like, oh, you didn't get to know, but here I am now.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. At the end of the day, I would say, you know why I would say no? because then you're just following the rules. And you're not following the rules with reason.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Sorry, what?
So, like, if you say it's better to not know,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, choosing sin is not better for you. It's just not better for you, like, emotionally, mentally, like, from like it's not, the rules are not there
Mm-hmm.
just to be like, so you're a good Catholic. It's like the rules are there because it's like, these are things like God protects you from,
Mm-hmm.
so that you actually don't end up being like emotionally or mentally like drained or physically drained, whatever it is.
You know what? It made me realize what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's really standing out to me is that I haven't been practicing it in the most conventional way.
Okay.
And why I'm saying that is because like okay, so the claim like what I'm my question was like, oh yeah, wouldn't it be better to then not know until the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I remember the answer to that. The reason it's not better to know is at the end is because after you've lived your life, if you were to go and God were to reveal himself and you were to then meet him, you would regret, right? In theory, again, this is the
Mm-hmm.
theory, like you would regret a lot of what you did
Mm-hmm.
because now you have been exposed to what God's true love is, his nature, and you realize all the faults in the
Mm-hmm.
way you've lived.
Yeah. And maybe even how you've wronged people, how
Hmm.
you've used people, how you've
Yeah.
like
How even
different.
unintentionally you
Exactly.
realize this action was wrong because this is what
Yeah.
happens. The biggest stretch for me, and sorry, just to finish thoughts because
Of
I
course. Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
I don't finish thoughts very well because my brain's always just moving on to the next thing. Is like the point is I feel like I haven't practiced conventionally in a long time because one, I don't like that like just came back to my head after so long,
Mm-hmm.
and two, um, I don't feel that way. You know what I mean? Like I think as a really strong practicing Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
that feeling should resonate with you, right? The reason
Sorry, what's the
the
feeling?
feeling of like my initial instinct was like, oh, so it might be better than to not know God
Yeah,
until
because
the
like
end.
I just want to do whatever I
Yeah,
want.
like I just want to be me,
Yeah, yeah.
and just live whatever. But
Right.
I think someone who's practicing and really delving into that relationship more
Yeah.
is striving to disconnect, like you said, from that human nature portion, that side of themselves. So
Yeah.
they already know, like, no, I wouldn't want to know God later in life because if I were to know God later in life, I would have to look back at my life with all this regret,
Whoa, that's interesting
r-
actually.
which I haven't. Yeah, it didn't come to me.
Yeah.
It's not something so
That's
that's
interesting. That didn't come to me either.
yeah.
It didn't come to me like the part where you're saying like you'd actually be just like a better person
Mm-hmm.
and like even just nicer to people and like I don't know, just overall you'd just be better. That piece didn't stick in my mind. In my mind it was just like okay, like you're maybe in a dis like an indirect
Mm-hmm.
way, it kind of was like, oh yeah, well, God's actually protecting you from.
Mm-hmm. You did say that.
I said
You
that, like
did say
God's
that.
protecting you
Yeah.
from stuff, but I never thought of it as like, um, you're actually like, there's so much more that you can do in your life
Mm-hmm.
that you could. Then at the end, you're like, whoa, what did I do with my life? Like that regret
Yeah,
piece.
yeah,
And I
exactly.
wonder if that's what happens in purgatory, or it's like all this stuff
Well, that's
comes,
part of it. Yeah,
and like
that's the whole
that's
idea
where
of the
it's
purifying
like
fires and
you
the yeah.
realize your
Because
wrongdoing.
if you were to go in front of God with all that,
Yeah,
that's the idea. Is like you would feel such torment and dread.
that's so interesting
Yeah.
because it's like now, oh my gosh, purgatory is being answered for me in this pod. It's wild. But it's like, it's interesting because,
Yeah.
like, if you know God on earth, then you have a chance to work out all those things that maybe, like you're saying, if someone doesn't know God, then purgatory will be much more intense
Yeah.
in
The
the sense that
idea.
they
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
really have to go through all of that. Whereas on earth,
Mm-hmm.
the more you deny yourself, the less you'll have to be refined in purgatory.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's like playing in the mud. right? You didn't even know the mud was dirty, and you thought it
Yeah.
was just really fun. And then you
Yeah.
get out of it, and then you look in the mirror and you realize, oh my gosh, there's actually so much mud.
Yeah.
And then you didn't realize, let's say, that the mud was actually poo. It's like the idea is like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, ew, it's poo, and then you're now scrubbing it off of you
Yeah.
to the point that it hurts
Yeah.
because you're like,
That's really
this is
interesting.
disgusting.
That's a good
Yeah,
analogy. The
that's the
fact that
idea
you
of it.
think it's mud.
That's the idea of it,
And I
right?
think
You don't
that's
think
the
you think it's harmless. You think it's fine, and
well,
then you
well,
grow
that's
to
the
realize.
thing with like even like any of these situations. It's
Mhm.
like you think it's okay, but and maybe there's some repercussions to it,
Mhm.
earthly repercussions. But after you're like, "Oh no, this is even more significant than I thought."
Yes, but you
Yeah.
know what's crazy about this?
Mhm.
Even saying this stuff,
Yeah.
it's it's not like I want to then now take this as my belief system and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to cleanse myself of this,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the hardest part where I'm now wondering and the reason I have such a disdain though for taking on that persona
Mhm.
is just because of what I associate it with. It's so interesting. I associate it with such um negatively. I associate with these negative attributes of a person to take on this kind of belief system.
What do you mean?
So, okay, we just came to this conclusion,
Mhm.
right?
Do you
That
think the conclusion we came to is negative?
no, I
Okay.
don't. I don't think the conclusion is negative,
Okay.
but taking it on as an
Yeah.
actual belief in here
Yeah.
and like living my life to that belief,
Yeah.
I associate negatively for some reason.
Is it because you feel like then you'll start lacking empathy for people who don't live that way?
Partially, I think
Or do you feel
partially.
like maybe by you taking that on, it's almost indirectly judging people who don't follow that way of life?
I think partially. I think even like for example, like right now,
Mhm.
like in this, to stand by that statement in this
Mhm.
episode and being like, hey, yeah, this is it.
Objective truth.
Kind of, it's like, yeah, it lacks this empathy. It lacks this understanding. It's too much of a harsh statement.
But can't both exist?
They can,
Because
I guess.
I think that because
Well,
at the
do you get what I'm saying
I
though?
do get
Do
what you're
you
saying.
feel what I'm feeling or not?
I do understand it. It's almost like is it like you're taking on a Pharisee mindset?
To some extent. But do you get it? Do you feel it? I mean, sorry, not did you even get it. Do you feel it? Or are you like
I think
vindicated somewhat?
I
Like
think
how do
I'm
you feel?
I think I'm half and half in the sense of maybe not half and half. I think there's a part of me that understands what you're saying,
Mhm.
but I think there's this other part of me where it's like you have empathy for people who don't know God and who are living in whatever way that they choose to live.
Mhm.
You have empathy in the sense that like and it's not in a judgmental way at all. It's actually just in a way where it's like, okay, like let me this just gives me the opportunity to hopefully work on myself to be a better
Mhm.
person
Yeah.
so that other people who just don't know God will see that and hopefully by some sort of an example and not to say that like it's and it's not to put like yourself in that position of like
Mhm.
now I am better and they can see me and it's not that it's just in like I think that's in it's in like everyday life in how you care about them
Yeah.
not in like wow look at you like helped this old lady cross the street today like wow you're swell it's not that it's like how you love people who are not in the
Yeah.
church. It's how you love people who are not like or it's how you love people who are in the church and not in the church. It's how you love everyone essentially at the end of the day.
Mhm.
But the focus is you're focusing on working on yourself. You're not focusing on working on other people.
Yes, okay. Sorry, so okay, you're not focused on working on other people means how did then you navigate that? I agree. So that statement I agree with. I'm
Mhm.
working on myself. That's part of what this like the podcast is about. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we're all not pointing fingers at each other, but we're working on ourselves.
Yeah.
Um sorry, but sorry, I was playing with these ideas right
Yeah,
now while you
yeah.
were talking. So part of me was thinking like maybe it's better then to not clue people into what God is
So that they
because
can keep
so,
living their
no, so
lives.
that they can go to heaven
But they'll have
in ignorance.
purgatory, right?
Yeah, so that's the
And
thing,
that'll
right? So
be
that's the point. You're saying, "Oh, but then you want to make sure they don't end up in that kind of situation where
mhm.
they feel this regret and all this shame." But then that notion, like how would you even navigate telling people that? Because one, I think that's in a very extreme thing to try to tell people.
I don't
And
know if you need to tell them
yeah.
necessarily.
So then how would you navigate it then?
Like how would you
So you're bettering yourself,
mhm.
right? So in your life. I mean,
So you
like
know what that
how to be practical,
includes?
like how does it
So practically,
yeah.
I think you pray for them. You pray for them. You don't have to
You
like
just pray just
you pray for them and
just pray a
you
bunch of rosaries.
well or you personally pray to God and you pray for their specific needs.
Okay.
Um I don't know. I think um and you love them. Like the way that
Yeah.
God would like
Yeah.
want you to like you care about them. You hope good things for them. Like I think all those things are like it's interesting because sometimes what you'll see is people in the church will see people who aren't living well and they'll be like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, like this person's like, you know what? Like God will show
Mhm.
them, or like this is going to happen to them because they're doing this. And it's like,
Yeah. Some
hang
kind of
on.
punishment or
Yeah. And it's like,
something, yeah.
hang on a second. Like, can we take a different approach to these people? Like, they're human beings, they're people,
Yeah.
they're struggling, there's stuff
Yeah.
going on. Like, let's care about them. Let's pray for them. Let's hope good things for them. Like, I think that those are ways that, I don't know, that we can navigate through that. But it's in working on yourself and it's in not judging them. You can
Mhm.
judge their lifestyle. I think that's fine. Um, but you can
Well, when you say judge the lifestyle, you mean like understand and acknowledge where their lifestyles may have faults?
exactly.
Okay.
That's or like how it could be detrimental
Mhm.
to their well-being.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Or it
Mhm.
could be detrimental to their soul at the
Sure.
end of the day
Yeah.
if that's what they're choosing. Like, you know, like
Okay. But
so
in
yeah.
practice, you don't have to tell them. Going back to the girl thing from last pod, like
Yeah.
you don't have to tell them; they'll get to it in their own
Um
journey.
I think if the opportunity
Yeah.
arises, then of course. But I don't think it I think I don't know if you're supposed to necessarily be like, well, like I need to preach this to you right now at this moment.
Mhm.
Um I think if God gives you that opportunity, the conversation opens up, they want to talk about God, they're going through they're say for example, someone is going through something
Mhm.
and they're struggling with something and it's really bad and they come to you. You could be like, "Hey, do you want me to pray with you?" You pray with them if they're open to it. Like you use those opportunities to and hopefully they'll feel supported in that
Mhm.
and not like you're not like pushing prayer down their throat. Like it's not like, "Okay, we're going to now that you're struggling, I've got you right where I want you."
No. Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like,
So I'm finding it really interesting how you're trying to navigate how to put this into
yeah,
practice.
what are your thoughts on how I'm navigating it? Is it strange or
No, no. I think it's not strange. It makes sense. It's
to
in
me
line with
it's
what.
personable. I feel like that's
No,
the
it is.
approach,
It
right?
is. It is. I think I'm feeling still something here, like a level of discomfort. I don't.
Yeah, try to explain where that's coming from. Like
Yeah,
what
exactly.
yeah, like
But you
what
don't have that feeling.
I wouldn't say I have a level of discomfort. No, because because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
the rules to me are not rules. They are like, they're not rules. Like,
Lack of structure. The
I
whole
hate
lack. Yeah, I
rules.
hate
So
rules.
I disregard the rules, okay? I don't like them.
They're guidelines.
They're whatever. No, like the but like no, the thing with the rules is that
Yeah.
like because I don't like rules, to
Yeah.
me it's like I need to understand why
Mm-hmm.
the church is saying not
Yeah,
to do
why
these
the rules
things.
exist,
Why
sure.
they exist. To me, like I have to know.
But once you know why they exist,
Once I know
you
why
don't
they
enforce them.
exist, well, it's not my job to enforce them. But
Exactly. I agree with that.
in my
You're
life,
gonna try to
I
improve
will try to enforce those rules.
for
Or
yourself.
not
Yeah.
rules, but for me, it's more like if I love God, then I will just want to not do these things, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of like the notion
Yeah.
of like, okay, if I actually love God, then I'm gonna try my
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
best
Mm-hmm.
to be like, okay, these are things that serve him. And at the end of the day, God's looking out for me. So why would I choose something that's not good for me? So, like, for example, like my sugar addiction,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, do I want diabetes? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's me lacking like self control
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
And
So,
you're trying to self-improve. You're trying to work on yourself. You're not gonna
yeah,
go out there preaching to everyone to stop eating sugar.
exactly. I'm not going to be
But you
like,
acknowledge sugar is bad.
but I acknowledge that, yeah, like if I can't stop
Yeah.
like eating my cookies like 20 times a day, that's a problem. Like, it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, God's not, self control is not a rule,
Mm-hmm.
it's just something that's good for you at the end of the day.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I just have this uneasiness. I don't know why.
It's because of the rules.
Is it because of the rules?
I don't know. Rules have
You don't
always,
feel so the
I always
uneasiness
have,
you feel is because of the rules.
I always feel uneasy when there are, when people are like, you got to do this
Yeah.
because this person from this authority place said
Mm-hmm.
this. It's like, okay, but wait, like, tell me why. Give me the why. Like, as long as I know the why and
Mm-hmm.
it's reasonable and it's like actually like good for me, sure, I'll follow that. I can get on board. Sure.
Okay, so when we go back to the whole the example that we gave.
Okay, which one? The murdering or the
No,
sex
the
before
sex
marriage?
before marriage
Okay.
and how if someone is not in the faith and they don't
Right.
know,
Right.
at the moment they're not even sinning, theoretically. Theoretically.
Um
They don't know that it's wrong.
right.
They're not aware of it.
It's not a mortal sin.
Yes. Okay.
But they're
So the point is it's they're currently just ignorant.
right.
And we made the joke like we shouldn't it's better than not to know, right? But then it's like, oh, we came to this realization, oh, but you'll live with that regret. And as someone who knows, you don't want to live with that regret. Like that's not it's better to not live with that regret. And so you want to improve yourself.
Mhm.
But you also don't want to push it upon other people.
Right.
And I was in my head making this idea like, oh, it's just better to then not convert people. It's just better for them to figure it out because
Right.
then at least the judgment system is going to be less harsh on them anyways. It's like you have a better chance.
Well, if you're saying that they're getting refined though in
Yeah.
purgatory, that's going to be worse.
So then
So
that's the
then I
thing though, if
wonder,
you do know then that or you really
yeah.
feel that strongly about that too on the other end,
Yeah. I get what
it's
you're
almost like
saying.
I then I have to go out there and say stuff. But
Well, there's multiple factors with that,
yeah.
right? Because if they don't believe in God, you're not going to go be like, hey, go get
Exactly.
married.
And it's such a huge stretch to come out and say like what we're saying right now. It's like
See, that's the
you're gonna
thing.
regret like okay, so imagine right now,
So
right?
I don't think it's that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think you go to them and tell them, hey, like, you better get married. I don't think it's that. I think it's about planting a seed. It's about, like, just giving them an opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
either by the way you live in your everyday life, caring about them,
Mm-hmm.
treating them in a way where they can feel that that you genuinely care about them. I think, and being open about the fact that you are a practicing
Mm-hmm.
Catholic. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's I think that that's like a I don't know. I feel like that those are good witnesses. Just it will hopefully those two things tie into play as to what, like, I don't know, like even your own like your in your own life, like mirroring what you believe, right? I don't know.
There was this interview, I believe, with Penn and Teller, or specifically Penn.
Okay.
I think Penn's the taller one, right?
I don't know who they are.
Penn and Teller are magicians.
Oh, okay.
They're in Vegas. They're very
Okay.
well known.
Okay.
And Penn is the basically atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not sure Teller, but Penn is atheist, and he was in an interview where he was saying, like, one of his reasons though is because his like he doesn't believe is because of his mom
Mm-hmm.
and like the situation with his mom. But sorry, irrelevant to the story. The point is
Yeah.
that he he made a statement that stood out to me. It's like, if you truly believe though that people who don't believe in God or don't believe in Jesus are going to go to hell, shouldn't you be then dedicating your entire life to trying to make sure that everyone knows who Jesus is so that they don't go to hell? Right? And I'm applying that here, where on the pod we're making this claim that, you're going to regret it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, we believe this. We believe you're
Yeah.
going to regret it then if you live that kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
And that claim to me makes me uneasy.
So here's the interesting thing with free will.
Mm-hmm.
If you take away free will, then everyone would just believe. And then there's like free will is actually an act of God's love
Mm-hmm.
because you get to choose to love God, right?
Okay. Yes.
So if we were to just go and tell people you have to believe in Jesus
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to go to hell, I don't think that's the approach that would actually.
Of course not. I don't think that's what
It's
I'm
a
arguing, though.
okay. So what is the, like, do you mean, like, what's the approach then?
I'm saying maybe there's some level of cognitive dissonance that I'm having with believing that claim that
I understand.
people are going to
Yeah.
regret their lives if they don't do it a certain way.
Hmm.
But then also then standing by, and if it's that important,
Yeah.
and allowing people to do that. And I think I also have a hard time, or maybe okay, maybe that's one thing, but maybe it's just actually this idea that I think that claim is so specific and so extreme to someone who would have to really believe in God in the first place, that there's no way you're ever going to be able to translate or make that statement in front of someone who doesn't believe and them understand it, that it's almost impossible. Like, there's no point in
But does
even believing in
that,
that.
do you have to make a statement? Like, do you have to say something? Or can it just be enough by you being in that
Mm-hmm.
person's life? You live your life a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
They know you're a Catholic.
Yeah.
They know that you go to church, that you pray, that you're a good person, that you treat them well, that you respect them,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't, um, I don't know, that there's no different, like, you see them as a human being, regardless of whether they're Catholic or not.
Yeah.
And they understand that. Um, isn't that, because isn't that planting a seed?
Yeah.
And if they ever do, if they're ever like, hey, like, can you tell me more about like church or blah, blah, blah,
Yeah. And then you get to
then
talk to them.
you
Yeah.
talk to them about that. And I think the thing is those opportunities come up when you actually are personable with people. Like when you actually are genuinely
Mm-hmm.
caring about people that, like, that just in
Mm-hmm.
your community, like your friends, and they don't have to be Catholic. I think you can get into those like the opportunity will come up
Yeah. No, that's fair.
if you are actually genuinely personable with these people
And honest about yours.
and honest about what you
But
believe.
then wait, what happens if they ask you about these beliefs? Do you say that? So you have a friend who is
Hmm.
living with their significant other,
Hmm.
and they're having sex and all that stuff, and then one day they're just like, Hey, what's your take on that?
You tell them honestly. Like, I feel like
You're gonna t-
you tell them honestly. Like, I've actually, so I have, I don't know
you're
if
gonna
I should tell
tell
the
them,
story,
I
but
believe you're gonna regret this down the
no, I
line.
don't think you say it like that. I think you say, you say, I believe that this is what I believe about
Yeah,
it. I don't think that this is the most um
the healthiest way to
the
go about it.
healthiest way, or like the most um fulfilling
Mm-hmm.
way, um because this,
XYZ, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then
And you're gonna regret this.
I don't think you need to say you're gonna regret it. You can say what the and you're gonna regret it. Anyways, peace out. We're done here. That's the end. No, like, I don't think you need to say you're gonna regret it. You can say like the reasons
Yeah,
why
yeah,
you believe it.
yeah,
And in that would be like, this is why, like, I would regret this if I lived like this.
yeah.
Right? Like, but, and you tell them, like, you're not judging them as people. You're just saying this is why you believe that this is
Mm-hmm.
the way that is healthier for you or better for
So
you.
wait, so how would you then? Just a curiosity, how do you explain then the regret part though? The regret piece that we have now brought up.
Mm-hmm.
How would you relay that to someone who is asking you your opinion on that? Would you completely exclude it, or would
Um,
would you still present it just
I
differently?
mean, you could present it in the sense of like, I believe that when I die, the
Mm-hmm.
things that I um do on earth that are creating distance between me and God will be revealed to me. And I believe, like, if this is something I strongly am
Mm-hmm.
against, I believe that's something that God will reveal to me
Mm-hmm.
at the time of, like, I don't know, refinement. But I don't know if you would get, it really depends on how
Yeah, how
deep
deep
this
you're gonna go?
conversation goes, right? Like, I think that the layers or the levels
Mm-hmm.
are really important. Like, it's so ambiguous in terms of who is this friend? How much are we, like, how deep are you guys getting? Like,
Yeah.
and how long is this, a like 4 hour conversation? Is a 4 minute conversation? Like, where's it going? I think, do you want to talk about the regret thing? I don't know. What do you think? Do you think you'd talk about that?
I think, sorry, I'm asking the question because I want to understand if there is a better, like a more objective way to navigate these
Mhm.
situations. And I think the reason I'm asking that question is because at the moment, I want to believe that everything that I've been able to stand behind,
Mhm.
I've never had to hide a part of it,
Right.
right? Like exclude some kind of information to
Mhm.
just make it more digestible. It's more like, yeah, I might say it in a way that is more digestible for
Mhm.
someone to understand, but yeah, I wouldn't exclude any portion of it. At least that's what I think I'm doing. So I guess part of me was finding it very uncomfortable or uncertain how I'm just going to explain this part of the conversation to them,
Mhm.
where I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be regretting this. Like, I'm going to feel this regret when I see God.
You know what the interesting part is, though? I think when you explain the
Mm-hmm.
reason why, because it's not rules again. It's
Yeah.
when you explain the reason why, you're
Well,
talking
you did it
about,
in a way, I'll just say, you did it in a way that made sense. Like, I was like, okay, no, if you explain it from your perspective and impersonally saying, I truly believe these, and because
mhm.
of that, if I like, I was like, that line of thinking and reasoning makes
Yeah.
sense, and I think someone can understand what you would.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so I guess that works. It
Yeah,
works.
and I think in that way you are telling them that the reason why
Yeah,
is what would cause the regret.
yeah,
So you're not actually excluding regret.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
you're
exactly, yeah.
actually explaining it.
But through your eyes, anyways, and your lens, and using you as the subject, not them.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you were to then sum it up into like digestible pieces of how would any Catholic who's currently practicing, how would they navigate this? One is focus on your own self improvement,
Mhm.
right? Not anyone else's. Apply what you understand and learned solely to yourself, and do not try to impose it on other people,
Mhm.
because they should come to that in their own way. Is that a fair statement to say?
Um,
As like a rule number 1 or step number 1, if not
you're
in order.
asking me to create rules. Do you understand
Guidelines.
how
Guideline number 1.